or you can keep this as its own completely separate entity. But I think to come to closure on the master plan, you know, we'd like to sort of have one with an alternate, because the issue at hand is this is building more program than you need. We don't have like sort of hard and fast uses for this if we provided all of the program required in these two buildings. And I think that that's really a decision point that, you know, you're going to be raising money for some of this, and, you know, what's more important in those choices in the back?
So then the council chambers, or the functions that are currently in the council chambers,
They're intended to be accommodated
in
here.
the new larger building.
New
Okay.
modern facilities. They, you know, I would assume when design progresses, the council chambers would be located somewhere that, you know, like has the presence, you know, on the site and to the town green, you know, that it would feel like a public space could open onto some of the main public space. But yes, the council chambers would be accommodated in the new administration building and with modern facilities at the right size, and so it would no longer be needed here.
To me, it's going to come down to architecture.
Exactly.
And so my gut is we're going to handle it in the next phase.
That's what I'm thinking.
And they may present two options. One with, this is the multi-purpose facility, and there's a secured indoor-outdoor courtyard that connects the two buildings so kids can walk from one to the other without worrying about wandering off. In another, it's separate. And it'll just come down to how good is the architect at making those, keeping it iconic and relating to people.
I think for planning purposes, that's probably a really good approach. It's like, we're not gonna solve it in a planning diagram, but the planning diagram can say, you have one approach or the other. You know, the size of the new building gets smaller in one, it stays what we show here in the other. They have two different cost implications. And when design starts, you decide what that really is.
So, something that Matthew just brought up that I wasn't aware of until you just brought it up about the slope of the road that goes behind the building that connects to Asheville to Station Lane. So if you were an Asheville resident and you want to come and go out to Maple to Watkins, you're gonna go down a little loop, a dip-de-doo, huh?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think this still needs some thought.
You know, it's only.
You won't really notice it.
You're not gonna notice it.
So there's no way that you might want to, and again, I've heard so many people say that they want the convenience parking in and out in front of the buildings. And I still don't see that here. And is there not a plan, a way to bring Asheville, you know, kind of in front of the buildings with a little drop-off parking area?
Absolutely, and we have a sketch that shows that. And it's been studied.
Microphone, please.
Oh, sorry. It's not my nature to shout. What Elizabeth has mentioned, is there a possibility to come straight through like this? To make the connection up to Station Lane, Asheville comes up through here, we'd still maintain this connection out to Fair Oaks and Asheville. And there absolutely is, you can do that. There's a couple of constraints that go with that. So our garage, our underground garage is this big block right here. And if you don't really want to put a road, a public road over the garage like that. There's going to be, it gets really technically complex and it's kind of odd, and you're going to have, you know, the pavement can settle up against the edge, and it gets kind of odd and messy. So what we could do then is you take this whole big block, slide it out towards Fair Oaks, and then you get the road in through this, right in through there. And what I found when I did that was, and unfortunately maybe Cheryl has a sketch.
I have it there if I could call it up.
Okay.
It changed shows.
But what happened is the convenience parking, this space right here, that's about 20 feet from the front door. And so when you put the road in through there, you don't really get any closer. And so it didn't seem worthwhile, but we can definitely show you the sketch. So there you see it right there. This would be the blue is the pavement, and so you can drive straight through. There's your connection back up to Station Lane. And what happens is the whole building shifts closer to Fair Oaks. This whole distance gets compressed, and then that, to get down into the garage, we really have to ramp this down significantly and through here. You're really going to go down deep just to get down in there. And then you can park right here in this blue area, right where I'm pointing. You'd have your public plaza right out in front, and you're right in front of the building. You're parking in front of it, and you can walk straight into the building. But these parking spaces, if I'm parking right here, it's about the same distance. So.
Are you envisioning that public plaza like a covered area? Are those columns in the squares?
It can be whatever.
It can be whatever you
Maybe
want.
you always want some cover over your entry point, and some kind of canopy or trellis is nice. I think that's something that would come in the design phase, but our goal was to kind of think of what would be the required sort of area you want to have to be able to do that or not do that, or do pieces of it. So yeah, I think absolutely, it's really nice to have cover before you come into an entry.
And then this drive through right here would be detailed in the same way that this is. So it feels like as I was mentioning, it's a tabletop plaza that you drive up on. You could have different pavement there. You wouldn't have asphalt. You'd have trees. It would feel more kind of like a courtyard that you're driving across. And it can be very elegant and be very nice. It's just the issue for the input we received, there was a strong preference not to have vehicular access going through this green space.
So those of you here, what are your thoughts on that? Because we did hear some difference of opinion during the outreach meetings, meeting to meeting. There was a larger consensus about keeping the center fully pedestrian. But then, the notion of convenient, you're not right in front of the building, you're on either end, and you're right sort of at the corner of the library. Might be a little bit further than those of you who can pull right up to the post office right now, but maybe not so much if you're walking over to the building department. Yes?
I prefer to not have the drive go through the front of the building, because then children have much more dangerous time getting into that building. I think you could solve this architecturally, like maybe having a beveled front instead of a flat front, and that way you could get to a side end, or not dead center in the middle entrance a little quicker.
Yeah, I think, again, there are multiple functions that people will be accessing at the administration building. And so there doesn't need to just be only one entrance right at the middle of the town green, face of that building. I think that, when the design proceeds, there can be some thought to how will people access the different uses, at what times of day, with what frequency. And you can start to craft, the edges of that building that face the green, that face the parking in such a way as to have those kinds of conveniences and safety. So I think you're right. I think there are some things that can be done during design that solve both. Any other thoughts about, the parking, drive-through?
I find the most attractive part of the original thing that you put up there is that plaza, that green plaza in there. I would really hate to see a road and parking lots in part of this.
In the back, yes.
I would just encourage maybe people to think about this notion of bringing parking right up to a building. That was what we did with strip malls, and we don't like that very much. And when you look at our park, we have a road coming all the way through this 22-acre space with a parking lot right outside our community meeting space with cars, right out that window. So, could you walk another 40 feet to pick up stamps, or 60 feet underneath or within a landscape space? Perhaps, or the parking spaces could be much more green and they could be on gravel with more trees, but, you know, the notion of bringing up parking right to a building as we did in the 50s and 60s is, you know, we're building this for the future, and maybe we want to take on some of the new planning paradigms. I'm just pushing back on that, because it could be a wonderful space with that green and making it more accommodating both for the community who uses it and goes there, but also the people who work there, and to be able to walk across of the different spaces and not be encountering parked cars.
One connection we don't show, but if we hopefully get daily service back, is staff might actually take the train.
Yes.
So you just want to think about that pathway. From the building to the train. You've kind of got things here and there, but.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm sorry I missed most of this, so you may have to bring me up to speed, but certainly I'm thinking with an aging population, and one of the lovely, charming things about our present librarians is that moms who are usually in a rush, you know, can kind of pull very close to the library and pick up the kids and drop off the book. And so I was just hoping that in whatever parking situation we think of, that we have disabled spaces, because we
Yes.
have an older population, very close to whatever buildings are most used, and also a place for kid pickup. I don't know if you've ever thought about mom and dad pickup, but I just hope that's worked into the plan.
Absolutely. We're required by law to put in the ADA accessible spaces as close to the building entry as possible. And
That's great, but if you could add to that a space for like kiddie pickup or,
Mhm.
you know, drop off.
yeah, there's actually plenty of room. It doesn't show in this, but there's kind of the road widens out right here with some
Go
subtle
back to
site.
the full one. the full site.
Matthew, could you go back to the full diagram and then just kind of talk people through the whole process? You're going to the library, how do you get there? On
Sure.
foot, on driving?
Here's the library, the proposed library. The existing library is actually down right in here, back in this area right here. And so in front of the library, there would be a large plaza, opening gathering space right there. And then immediately adjacent to it is parking right in here. And there could be, the reason we didn't show parking continuing down here is it just gets too close to the library. But once again, this is master planning. That library could shift down. We could put more parking down along this face. The library moves closer into the park, and you would get that, you know, immediate parking space right there in front of the library. This was kind of that odd space I was talking about where the pavement kind of widens out. Is it because we have to work with the existing Caltrain parking, and then we're dipping our road down to get around these heritage trees right here and save them. But there might be some kind of, we can look at some opportunity right here to create a little island tuck-in area for drop-off parking for parents picking up children. Or one of the things I do, and I need to do it, I got the email notice about it, a whole bunch of kids' books need to go back to the library. And it's really nice to have a quick spot where you can pull in, drop off those 20 books, and then go on your way. So I totally appreciate that comment.
Yeah, and one of the things we thought about in, positioning the library is, there's also some service entrance functions, staff entrance, dropping off books, deliveries, and things like that. And so we had always imagined that, this corner would act as, the main entrance, the public entrance coming in and out, but there'd be some kind of entry, more minor entry, sort of maybe back on this end, so that, there could be deliveries, there could be a book drop off and, like a little drop off pass through or something. So, we really are thinking about sort of those two sides to the library as well, that you really do need some way for, actual just delivery functions to occur when the library is taking in new materials and whatnot. And so I think, considering this corner, the public entry and where, everyone's coming and going to the library, and back in this area is where there'd be some more staff-related, service-oriented functions. And, you know, this whole edge in the design can all be massaged to allow for all the kinds of things that you're talking about. Yes?
Related to the library and town hall, so I think I'm understanding now that your design has moved the library
Yeah.
east of
Yeah.
where
Yep,
it is
up
now.
there.
So that this discussion about the town hall being an iconic building, that if related to the other might lose some of its iconicness.
Right.
It doesn't seem that way now, because they seem like a very united two
If
buildings.
you're back
But if
here,
it's moved separately, then you have a different issue. But architecturally, there are some similarities now with the tiled roof and the like,
I mean,
and
they-
they are
they can be
geographically
treated like
closer
a
to each
related
other.
complex, the way they are now. So if you go around the corner, they kind of hang together.
Yeah.
But much of the view of this building is really that it's holding this corner as you drive around it, and at that view, you don't really see the library behind it very much. So, you really are, I mean, this is your most common sort of website shot of the town of Atherton, is, always looking at the face of this building. And in that sense, if you married something up alongside of it, is, sort of what I'm thinking is, the challenge when you go to put that together. But, I mean, it can all be done.
And if you did unite them in one
Mhm.
form or another, possibly that little box on the edge would not have to be used.
Correct.
Because it would be,
You'd
the
have
function
enough,
might be taken care of by the town hall.
exactly,
Oh.
exactly. Yeah, you might have to build less if you worked out all the functions between those two structures. Yes?
Cheryl, I think to help with Rosemary's question, there are duplicative spaces for police, EOC. There's places for the library, the 1,500 square feet for the library. There's a town hall, or the old town hall, which the new purpose has not been identified, and there's
Right.
also new council chambers.
Right.
So I think that part of the next phase of the process will be is we don't need all these spaces. What's going to happen where? We're going to look at the square footage and also the costs,
Mm-hmm.
because it's all going to come down to how much money we can raise.
Yeah.
To clarify, I'm sorry, can I just clarify something? As represented there, the existing town hall,
Yes.
that little T, the longer side is the current library?
No, the library's not, you're not seeing it, it's back
It's been
here.
demolished then?
It would be demolished,
You're
yes.
actually, when you say the existing town hall, you are actually saying that's not the existing site. That is you're scooping up the building.
No, this is the existing site and building where the town hall and council chambers are right now.
Okay,
We're leaving it exactly where it is.
that is.
But the library comes off the back of it and sits in here.
Okay.
And we would be demolishing that and building a new structure.
Okay.
And one other key, just kind of big gesture, see how the green space, and then the idea that the buildings define the edge of that. And that's, those are kind of the key goals. You have this pure green space that doesn't have traffic going through it or cars, and then the buildings wrap it. It's a very classic geometry arrangement of buildings. And the other thing I want to emphasize is that we probably haven't shown a lot of creativity, that the buildings are just blocks. But these buildings, they could be,
Angled,
angled,
curved.
curved, they could have bump outs, they
Right.
could have all sorts of architectural devices which would start to give you cues about where entry is, where do I
Yeah.
walk in. And so the relationship to, where you park and when you drive in, you're gonna see these. There could be corner features that you would see as you come in off of Fair Oaks. I purposely, if I may, didn't show, a lot of planting in this area, because you come in here and that's gonna be a very important view. And this whole edge of the building can be articulated in some unique way to start to say gateway, and when you see some feature right here, oh, that's where I go.
And also, just again, to sort of speak to that, when we sort of imagined how much program do we need, how big of a footprint do we need for the administration building, what can go on the second floor isn't as big as what's on the first floor that you're seeing there. So the building won't be this big solid blob that's 2 stories either. It will be shaped. The second floor might not be as big as the first floor, and so you'll really get variety that you can't see here in a planning diagram. So, again, the stage that we're at is not looking at aesthetics, not looking at design of the buildings, but all of those things, what we're trying to do is make sure that all those kinds of decisions are still possible within the framework of the planning. And that you have an appropriate cost that will allow you to do that effectively.
The other thing that's not really obvious from looking at this versus the old plan, because you don't really see it, is the scale is going to feel a lot bigger. Because like when you were trying to figure out where's the existing town hall, right now the road is right next to it. And so that width of that site on that side is very narrow, and that's what we're used to seeing. It's going to double. And that park in the middle, the town green in the middle is like an acre. Imagine a wide open acre in the middle of the project. So the scale, because right now it's all asphalt and it's behind tree lines.
You have a bunch of
those
little
buildings
buildings
over there by
all
the
over the
railroad.
place. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna look very different.
But the scale's going to feel different.
Yes, it is.
It's going to feel kind of open. And,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Any other thoughts? I want to be mindful that we're, getting close to 8 o'clock, and so I don't want to run over the holiday season. Yes, way at the back.
Would you accept a contrarian view?
Sure.
I'm Lou Paponis and I reside on McBain Avenue. Bought our property in '79. My in-laws owned the property from 1928. We built in '83 and finished in '84. I give credit to this team for presenting what they have, but I think the cart is in front of the horse for this reason. I don't know how many of you built your homes with architectural drawings or just moved into a home that was already built. In either case, it had to suit what it was that you wanted. From what's going on in this community now, everything is being built new. Homes are being purchased from $3.5 to $5 million, torn down and rebuilt with larger quarters at higher prices. So what I'm saying that we have here is I'm going to make a comparison. We have 3 books, and they're labeled Town Council, Library, and Police Station. You open the book and there's nothing in it. Why? Because you don't know what's inside that building. Is this formation? Is that going to serve the town hall? These people may know, but they're asking for our opinion. Is that what we want? Now, I attended the meeting, and I have to apologize to Mayor Lewis because I was late at that meeting, but I attended that meeting and listened very carefully. There were questions that came up. Do you want level parking, underground parking? Do you want a single-story building, 2-story building? Where do you want this located? How do you want it fixed, and so forth? Now, I'm not coming to you as someone that doesn't have knowledge. I served on the committee with Menlo School for 20 years, and every building that was built on that property in the last 20 years, I and several other neighbors had the voice to say where that property was going to be placed on that, or rather where the building was going to be placed on the property, in what direction, what sound, what lighting, what protection they're going to have for the neighbors, and so forth. So I don't come to you as a guy that just is against everything. But I think before you should proceed with giving opinion of single-story, 2-story, where it's going to be, where's parking, and so forth, you should have a picture of the interior of the building and how it's going to be used. And then you know where you want your parking. You'll know how close you want one building to the other. You want to know whether you have visitor section or whether you want to make it strictly a business area for the town. So these are things I think that we should think about very seriously before we come to a conclusion that this is what we want. So this is my opinion. I praise the team here for making a presentation, but I think, in my personal opinion, the cart is before the horse. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your election, young man.
Hi, honey.
Any other thoughts or comments? No?
Can't top that.
Ah, I know.
Actually, I did have one comment.
That's
Sorry.
extra.
But, I mean, I would just say that my takeaway from part of the meeting is that we want something that's grander, that presents gateways or some sort of profile or presence. And, you know, if that's kind of the general feeling of the town, it's okay. It's not necessarily something that, it's not something that's particularly inspirational for me. But I mean, if that's what people kind of like, that's okay. I did really want to speak on behalf of preserving that town hall and some functions there. And I really liked your comments about kind of keeping them a little bit separate or kind of setting it off. I mean, I understand what this gentleman was saying, just to kind of think a little bit about what he was saying about tear downs and scale and things going up new. And I understand you can't get in the way of change, but actually, I mean, that is a really nice thing to preserve. And I think that capital campaigns based on, I think they should have some emotional resonance and kind of like talking about multi-purpose and like, you know, flexible spaces. I don't know if that gets me out of bed or gets my checkbook out. I think some element of preservation or speaking to the past is nice. And I would say that long before we lived in Atherton, I know nobody seems to like the existing library, but I love it. And that's where I took my daughter, my 9-year-old, and now this little one. It works fine for us. I'm happy with building a new place. It really doesn't bother me, but that area is actually quite, if you read online about our town hall and the library itself, like Yelp comments, things like that. I don't know if anybody's talked about that.
Yeah.
People talk about how it's like this stumbled upon fairy tale quality. So in terms of like wanting to open up everything to be very campus-like, I don't need to go to university again. I don't need to, you know, feel like I'm in, you know, some of these other, you know, towns that have built up something very grand while losing some of the charm that was right in front of them. So I would just emphasize that. Thank you.
Are the new library going to continue the feel of the town hall?
We're not really at that stage right now with this process. I mean, I think we're going to conclude our process with defining the zoning on the site and the planning and the overall cost to do it. And the next stages, when you really get into designing each of the buildings and the rest of the site, is really where you'll start to wrestle with those questions.
And there will be future.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the process that some of you have participated in, like the workshop tonight, I think it's the intention of the committee and the council to continue this very open, transparent process all the way through the design process until these are constructed. And, you know, I really appreciate your comments. I think some of the wrestling with is, you know, how do you create kind of a there, you know, sort of you are in the Civic Center, it is the Civic Center of Atherton, and balance, you know, that pastoral, you know, sort of special quality you have because of the trees in the site and just the nature of Atherton itself. And, you know, I think that some of going toward more of a town green rather than a big town square is part of what evolved in the process to what you're seeing now to try and attempt to balance some of that. And, you know, we could keep going and, you know, getting this better and better, but we're not designing the project yet, and that's not our charge. And so I think what our job is to record these kinds of comments and thoughts and make sure that they kind of get into the final discussion that's incorporated into our product, and make sure that the next team that picks this up and continues forward on design has the benefit of all of the dialogue we've collected with you and can begin to address and refine some of the things that you've all mentioned.
Just one more slight silly comment. For the kids who won't stay quiet in the library, in that town green, could you put one little place where there's a hopscotch?
Oh yeah, you know, we actually have that. I mean, we're not really showing an actual playground, but the idea is to have a spot, because we did hear that. It's like, sometimes you just need to get the kids outside, we have something for them to do while one of my kids is in story time, or, you know, so definitely we will be noting that. Okay, any other comments? Thank you, everyone.